Hey fourth graders, this is Miss Walgie, and today we are working on character setting plot in language arts. So what are we learning and doing today? Today we're going to continue exploring poetry and work toward becoming poets like Jack. We'll read pages 49 through 52 of Love That Dog. We'll find the gist of what happened and how Jack feels about it. Then we'll read The Princess and the Pea. We'll annotate the text and answer test-style questions about it. So first, we're going to read pages 49 through 52 of Love That Dog. Remember, this is on your teacher's Clever. If you want to have the actual text in front of you, you can go to your teacher's page right now. You can pause this video and read along. I'm going to go ahead and read it now. All right, here we go. This is page 49, and it's March 27th. Yes, you can type up what I wrote about my dog Sky, but don't type up that other secret one I wrote. The one all folded up in the envelope with tape on it. That one uses too many of Mr. Walter Dean Myers' words, and maybe Mr. Walter Dean Myers would get mad about that. I was very glad to, this is April 4th now. I was very glad to hear that Mr. Walter Dean Myers is not the sort of person who would get mad at a boy for using some of his words. And thank you for typing up my secret poem, the one that uses so many of Mr. Walter Dean Myers' words. And I like what you put at the top. Inspired by Walter Dean Myers. That sounds good to my ears. Now, no one will think I just copied because I couldn't think of my own words. They will know I was inspired by Mr. Walter Dean Myers. But don't put it on the board yet, okay? Is Mr. Walter Dean Myers a live person? And if he is, do you think he could ever come to our city, to our school, to our class? And if he did, we should hide my poem with his words. Hide it real good, just in case he would get mad about that. All right, I want you to pause your video right now, and I want you to go into Kidem, and I want you to tell me what was happening on these pages and how did Jack feel about it. Remember, your teacher knows if you're listening to these lessons by if you answer the questions. So make sure that you listened to how Jack was feeling and what was going on. If you're not sure, maybe pause and re-listen to the words so that way you can answer in Kidem. All right, so you should have answered those questions about Jack and what was happening in Love That Dog today and how he was feeling about it. Now let's look at our learning targets. Here's what we want to be able to do today. We want to be able to identify the character, setting, and plot in a story. We want to be able to annotate a text, and we want to be able to answer test-style questions. So right now, I would like you to take some notes in your reading journal. You can pause when you need to. I'm going to continue to talk about what I want these notes to look like. So basically, I want you in your reading journal to draw a nice square like this square on my screen. Then I want you to separate it into these 3 sections. This first section you should label characters. The second section labels setting. The third section should be plot. When we talk about characters, we're thinking about who is in the story. When we talk about the setting, we are talking about where and when the story takes place. And when we talk about plot, that's us thinking about what happens in the beginning, middle, and end of the story. Sometimes you might see BME for beginning, middle, end. And this is something that if you've been at Stewart's Creek before this year that you would have seen in especially 2nd and 3rd grade. So go ahead and take these notes in your journal now, pause when you need to, and then start again when you're ready. All right, you should have taken those notes, and now we're going to look at today's text. Right away, I notice a major difference. I notice when I look at this text that this looks very different from the poetry that we've been working with for the past several weeks. I see that this is organized not by lines and stanzas, but by sentences and paragraphs. So I know what I'm going to do right now. We've talked about that good readers highlight the title of a text. This says The Princess and the Pea. They also number their paragraphs, just like we numbered our stanzas and our lines in our poem. I'm going to number our paragraphs right now. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to go to page 2. 5, 6, 7. All right, now I'm going to read The Princess and the Pea. While I read, I'm going to stop in each paragraph and underline things that stick out to me, either people, settings, possibly new words that I don't know, because remember, we are talking about character setting plot today, so I'm focused on that while I'm reading through this text. Here we go. Once upon a time, there was a prince who wanted to marry a real princess. So I know I'm talking about a prince, and it's interesting to me that he wants to marry a real princess. He traveled the world and met many princesses, but he didn't know how he could tell if they were true princesses. So he wants a princess that's a true princess. Each claimed to be real royalty. However, something about them didn't seem quite right to him. This word royalty means someone like a queen, king, prince, princess. That means royalty. That's what royalty is. He would always express his doubts when questioned by his mother, the queen, and he always had some silly reason for these doubts. A doubt is something that makes you unsure. He would say, I'm not sure she's a real princess. Her walk is not very princess-like. Or, just look at her hair. It isn't fixed like she's royalty. Or he would question, what princess would wear those shoes with that dress? People started to think the prince was just being picky and believed he would never find what he was looking for. So he returned home full of sorrow, because he feared he would never meet a real princess. So I'm going to go back to this paragraph here, and I'm going to tell you why. I saw some quotation marks, which tells me that this is a character speaking. I know that this is the prince speaking, so I'm going to highlight these quotations. All right, so I also noticed that people started to think the prince was just being picky and believed he would never find what he was looking for. So he returned home full of sorrow because he feared he would never meet a real princess. So when I read this paragraph, if I didn't know what the word sorrow meant, I could use the clues in the text that tell me that people didn't think he would find what he was looking for, and that the prince feared he would never meet a real princess. So that makes me think that sorrow means sad. Let's go to paragraph 3. One dark, stormy night, there was a knock on the palace door. A palace is a very, very fancy place to live. Think of a castle, but it's not a castle. So if it asks us questions, we know that these characters are at a palace. When the prince answered, he found a girl standing in the rain. She was soaked from head to toe and was shivering from being in the cold. Through her chattering teeth, she asked, "May I please take shelter in your home? I am a princess who became caught in this terrible storm, and I need a place to stay until I can reunite with my family." Well, the prince didn't know what to think, but because she claimed to be a princess, he let her in. All right, let's look back at this paragraph and think about the characters, the setting, and what's happening in this paragraph. All right, one of the first things that I noticed was all of the words that described the setting. So I saw one dark, stormy night. A girl was standing in the rain. She was soaked from head to toe and was shivering from being in the cold. I also noticed that she had chattering teeth. All of these things really, that was like imagery for me. I really had a clear picture of what was happening in this paragraph. I also saw these quotations. May I please take shelter in your home? I am a princess who became caught in this terrible storm, and I need a place to stay until I can reunite with my family. I know that this is what the girl was asking. All right, let's go on to paragraph 4. Paragraph 4. The queen overheard what the girl had said and was very suspicious. The girl was quite a wretched sight in the eyes of the queen. She thought the girl did not resemble royalty with her sopping wet hair and drenched clothing. A princess? We'll see about that, the queen thought to herself, but said nothing about her doubts. The prince was confused and thought, how can this girl standing before me be a real princess? She looks more like the help. Let's find things in this paragraph that help us understand what's going on. All right, so I know I've heard in this text that there is a prince, there is a girl claiming to be a princess, and then there is the queen. So we know the queen overheard. That means that she listened to someone else talking to someone else. So she was listening from another room or nearby. What the girl had said and was very suspicious. The girl, who is the other character, was quite a wretched sight, this says. I know sight means to see something or what something looks like. So I know I can go back to paragraph 3 here and think about how the girl must be looking and think about what the queen might think about that. So this was the eyes of the queen. We also saw that she talked about her sopping wet hair and her drenched clothing. Sopping and drenched, I know, are words for talking about how wet something is. So that really paints a picture in my mind of what the princess or the girl claiming to be a princess looked like. We also see some quotation marks here that tells us that there's dialogue. That means the character is speaking or thinking something to themselves. A princess, we'll see about that. The queen thought. And then I see another quotation from the prince that he was confused and thought, how can this girl standing before me be a real princess? She looks more like the help. This is interesting to me because this tells me that the help would be people who help the prince that he pays to help. So someone like a cook or a maid or anyone who isn't royalty. So that's what the princess looks like or that's what the girl claiming to be a princess looks like to the prince. Let's go on to paragraph 5. While the prince led the girl to the warm fireplace where she could dry off, the queen had a plan and ran to have the guest room prepared for the girl. She took a small pea and put it under the bottom mattress of the guest's bed. Then she ordered for 20 more mattresses to be placed on top. As if that wasn't enough, she sent for 20 more feather beds to be laid on top of the mattresses. Finally, the queen was satisfied. The bedding was fit for a true princess. So let's go back to this paragraph now and let's look at what's happening. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to underline wherever I see a character in this paragraph. So I see the prince, the queen, the girl, the queen again, and I see this word satisfied. Finally, the queen was satisfied. The bedding was fit for a true princess. That makes me think that she was happy or content with how things looked, that it was okay to her. There was not any dialogue in this paragraph, so I'm going to go on to paragraph 6. Here we go. During breakfast next morning, the queen asked, "How did you sleep, my dear?" She was expecting the girl to have had the soundest sleep in such luxurious bedding. But instead, the girl replied, "I don't mean to be rude, but it was the most awful night I have ever had. It felt as though I was sleeping on a boulder, and now my back and shoulders are black and blue." All right, so when I read this, I noticed that we're talking about the next morning now. So it's a different day. We're talking about the queen. And I see that the queen asked, "How did you sleep, my dear?" So that's the queen speaking. Something else that was interesting to me is that the queen wanted her to have the most sound sleep, the soundest sleep. If I didn't know what soundest meant, I would think back to how she organized the bedding for the girl. And that makes me think it would be quite a comfortable night that she sleeps all the way through, doesn't wake up at all, in such luxurious bedding. If I didn't know what luxurious meant, I would think about, what do I know about royalty or queens or princes or princesses? They probably have extremely nice things, the best things, because they usually have a lot of money. So I would think luxurious bedding means very expensive, very, very nice bedding. So now we're talking about the girl and what she says. And here was her quote about not being rude, but it was the most awful night of sleep she ever had. It felt as though I was sleeping on a boulder, and now my back and shoulders are black and blue. All right, let's go on to paragraph 7, the very end here. Shocked at the girl's response, the queen realized this girl was a real princess. She had finally found someone worthy of her son, and the prince could not have been happier because he had found his true princess. The two were married at once, and they lived happily ever after. Let's look back some more at this story. Really, the only thing in paragraph 7 that stands out to me, other than talking about the queen and the prince and the princess, was I saw at the very end here that they lived happily ever after. So I know in a fairy tale that means it's the end. So now what we're going to do is we are going to fill in the chart that we looked at earlier. So characters, who were the characters in the story? I know that there was a prince, a queen, and a girl who ended up being a princess. Where and when did the story take place? So sometimes we don't know the when, but I remember reading about a palace. I remember that on one of the days in this story, it was a dark and stormy night. It was so stormy and so bad that this princess was soaked from head to toe. She was cold, her teeth were chattering. So this takes place at a palace one stormy night. And the next day. All right, next I'm asked to talk about what happens in the beginning, middle, and end of the story. So I need to go back to the story and I need to figure out where is the beginning, where's the middle, and where's the end. So I'm going to do that now. When I look at this story, I know the first 2 paragraphs were all about the prince talking or us learning about the prince who is trying to find a true princess. In the second paragraph, I'm told all the things that the prince would say about girls he met that he didn't think were a true princess. I think the biggest change happens here when we have a dark and stormy night. So I'm going to label paragraph 1 and 2 as the beginning of this story. Beginning, and that goes to the end of paragraph 2. So I know that the middle starts in paragraph 3 when this girl shows up to the palace. That is the middle of the story from paragraph 3 on. So I need to think about now where is the middle going to stop and where is it going to be the end? Well, we just read in paragraph 7 that they lived happily ever after. And to me, I know that that is going to be the end. When I was reading this story, I know I learned about the girl showing up, that the queen and the prince weren't sure if she was an actual princess. We saw that the prince and the queen offered the girl to stay the night and all the things that the queen did to test this girl to see if she was a true princess. So to me, paragraph 7 is the actual end, because I know that this is where the story wraps up. So I'm going to label middle from paragraph 5 to paragraph 6. That's going to be the middle. So now I need to take what happened in the beginning, middle, and end of this story, and I need to put it into my beginning, middle, and end chart for the plot to figure out what was really happening during those times of the story. So in the beginning, when I read these first 2 paragraphs, I know that we were introduced to the prince and told about how he couldn't find a real princess. So I'm going to put that into my own words right here. Introduced to the prince who couldn't find a real princess. I'm also going to write sad because we know that the prince was full of sorrow. He was sad. Middle. So I know that the middle we talked about starts at paragraph 3 when the girl shows up who we learn is an actual princess. So a girl comes to the palace claiming to be a princess, right? She says she's a princess, she needs a place to stay. The queen says, we'll see about that. And we know that the queen decides to give her a test with all of these mattresses and a pee to see how she sleeps. I'm going to label that in the M for my middle here. A girl comes to the palace claiming to be a princess. The queen decides to test her to see if she actually is. I think it's important to also note, because this is still the middle of the story, that the girl told the queen that it was the most awful night she ever had trying to sleep. The princess had a terrible night's sleep. So in the end, we learned that the queen realized she was a real princess and the prince could not have been happier because he found his true princess. And they got married and lived happily ever after. So I'm just going to wrap that up there for our end. The girl proved to be a real princess. The prince married her. They lived happily ever after. I'm going to squeeze that in there after. All right. Okay, so now we are going to answer some test style questions you're likely to see on a 4th grade reading test about this story. I'm going to pull that up now. All right, 4th graders, here are my questions that I need to answer. An important thing I need you to know is that you will also be responsible for answering these questions in Kidam. Most of these questions I am going to give you the answers for by showing you how to find the evidence in the text or by talking through it by thinking aloud myself. So it's very important that you pay attention and that you mark the correct answers because I'm walking you through that now. Let's get started.